Welcome back. All right, so news of the day video for all you fine people for your Tuesday, March the 21st. I don't have anything related to Fanatics on the board. I've already done the video on it. But I will say this, the backlash is still out there. And I know there are people who are saying, hey, Fanatics, I'm happy with what I have. If you've had a good experience with Fanatics, that's great. There are a lot of people that haven't. And there are a lot of people that have a lot of concern. And I do think it's legitimate concern. But we'll see how the NHL navigates this. They've signed a 10-year contract. So it's kind of done. The die is cast. So we're going to talk about Florida a couple of times in this video. I'm going to start off talking about the fact that A, they're above the playoff line, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, and B, the fact that Sasha Barkov is now their all-time leading scorer. So last night with an assist, he moved to 614 points. That passes Jonathan Huberdeau, who had 613 at the time that he was traded to the Calgary Flames. So he tops the all-time points list until I would think Tkachuk reaches 600 points, next year? It feels like he's scoring a lot. But it's good. Barkov has been, I think, the best player Florida's had in their history. So it makes sense that he is the number one player on the all-time points list. And all the best to him and the Florida Panthers. We will come back to them. The Canucks tweeting out this morning that Filip Hronek at practice. So Hronek's getting close. I know that's been an ongoing question since they picked him up. One of, how long is Hronek going to be out? What's going on with Hronek? The Canucks' record, of course, has been much better since Tocchet took over. So, there's the way to look at it. The record seems to be, also skewed a little bit by the schedule being easier since Tocchet took over. But, man, there are some questions I've got. So when we get to the end of the regular season, and I'm doing the autopsies on the teams who missed the playoffs, the Canucks video could end up being quite the video because I have some questions and just there's a lot of head scratchers. But Hronek joining the lineup when he arrives in the lineup will be, I think it'll be fun to see how he does. And I honestly hope he does well. Now, revisiting the playoff conversation, the Florida Panthers currently with 79 points, Pittsburgh with 78. Their upcoming schedules, similar in terms of difficulty. So between now and the end of March, the Florida Panthers, they play at Philadelphia tonight. Then they're at home against Toronto. Asterisks mean a team above the playoff line. Then they're at home against the Rangers before they head out on the road. They have Ottawa, Toronto, and the Montreal Canadiens. So Toronto can play a role in Florida's ability to make the playoffs or not. If Toronto wins both of those games, make it more difficult. But of course, for Pittsburgh, they've kind of backed out of the playoffs as well. So their next games, they've got an upcoming road trip where they're at Colorado and at Dallas. So those are not easy wins right there, right? Especially with Colorado and the way they've been playing. Then they're at home against Washington before they go to Detroit, and then they're at home against Nashville. So what's interesting is there are 3 out of 6 games for Florida against teams above the playoff line. There's 2 out of 5 for Pittsburgh before the end of the month that are against teams above the playoff line. So there's the possibility they lose at Colorado, they lose at Dallas, and, we could see everybody saying, that's it, Pittsburgh's done. And then they could win against Washington, Detroit, and Nashville and pull themselves right back into it. So this is going to be a fun race. I do hope it goes right till the 80 to 82 game mark where we don't know who's going to make the playoffs. And I was tempted to throw the Islanders on the board, but at this point, the Islanders, I'll leave them where they are because the fight is between Florida and Pittsburgh. But yeah, the Islanders are right there as well. So there's very little difference between these teams. And it's nice to see the East having an actual race this year, as opposed to last season where it was 8 playoff teams and 8 that we knew wouldn't make the playoffs by the middle of November. Good news for Rangers fans tonight. Ryan Lindgren will return to the lineup. So the Rangers, who have scored, I think it's 87 goals since they last allowed one. It's ridiculous. I think it's 15 goals since they allowed their last one. It's a lot. The good news is Lindgren coming back to the lineup means it'll be easier to keep the puck out of your net. He's a very good defensive defenseman who's got a little bit of offense there as well. And he's one of the tougher players in the NHL. So if an injury keeps him out of the lineup, it's legit. He's not just looking for a little bit of time off. Lindgren, last year in the playoffs, it was ridiculous. He would take absolutely brutal hits. He would go off limping. He would go off. I swear, he could have gone off on a stretcher and come back 10 minutes later and I would have been like, yeah, well, it's Lindgren. So it is great to see him back in the lineup for the New York Rangers. One guy that will not be in the lineup for the rest of the season is Boston's Derek Forbort. He's to miss the rest of the regular season at the very least. So I've got rest of the season, but I want to say that I meant regular season, and it's after a shot block against Winnipeg, and that's why you pick up a defenseman at the deadline. That's why you pick up defensemen and you make sure that you've got a lot of them. What Toronto did, and that's absolutely why, because you have the possibility of losing a lot of defensemen. And Boston's had that happen to them before. Good news for Toronto fans, Noel Acciari returning to the lineup tonight. So it's not Ryan O'Reilly, but it's Noel Acciari, and good bottom six forward, and they'll be glad to get him back. Really, for Toronto, this season has been, I think, a pretty solid success. But because Boston's been ridiculously good, because we've known the whole way along that they're going to play Tampa Bay in the first round, and there's that whole, can they beat Tampa in a first round setup? I don't think they necessarily get as much. This is going to sound weird because they get a lot of coverage, but I don't think they get the credit that they deserve for how well they've put this season together, considering injuries they've had on the blue line, and a season that has not been all that smooth. So I'm going to say that for Toronto, I do think there are those who are severely underrating what this team might be able to do. Totally get why. I totally understand why, but they'll be interesting to watch come playoff time. Vince Dunn has a chance to tie an NHL record from this season anyways tonight. He has a 12-game point streak going. Tonight they're against Dallas, so I think he has a good chance of keeping that streak going. Erik Karlsson's had the longest streak by a defenseman this year with 13, and so Dunn has had 17 points over those 12 games. Vince Dunn's playing the best hockey of his entire career right now. It's been ridiculous to watch. I don't think he ends up in the top 5 necessarily for Norris, but he's been fantastic. And tonight, in the game against Dallas, they're starting Joey Daccord. He was called up on an emergency basis. They're saying that Grubauer is out. He's not available. So they didn't specify an injury in what they said, but I mean, it could be something personal as well. But Daccord starting tonight, we'll see how that affects things. Again, we've had a lot of goaltenders play this year. I know that we hit a record in 2020, I believe it was. We hit the record for the most goalies to play in any given season. It feels like we're going to eclipse that this year. At least it feels like it. It's definitely something I can do a video on once the regular season's done and go through just how many goaltenders have been used by every team. So this is something that came out a little while ago. Katie Strang had a good article on Harvard and accusations about hazing, naked skates, and just some really bad, inappropriate behavior going on at Harvard. Now, it definitely doesn't sound like there's a lot of denial coming out of the hockey program there, and this is the women's hockey program. There's not a lot of denial necessarily, other than everything's fine. And of course, when it comes to hazing, when it comes to these kinds of things, they can be accepted by the team. They can be accepted on some level within an organization, but publicly and just in general, people have soured on that kind of treatment and that kind of behavior. So now Harvard is doing an investigation into this. The thing is, the article came out a while ago, so I'm kind of surprised it's taken Harvard this long to start an investigation, and I wonder if it's because of public backlash, maybe some questions being asked by parents about what exactly is going on with my daughter right now in your university that we're paying $11 billion to send her to. So, yeah, this investigation gets started up. Hazing has been a thing in sports for forever, and I've honestly never understood it. I don't get it. I've never had any kind of an initiation for anybody in anything I've ever been a part of. So yeah, I do wonder what's going to happen with this investigation. And again, much like some of the corruption stuff I've talked about when it comes to the GTHL, which now we're going to hear more about minor league hockey in Canada and things with potential corruption at the lower levels too of hockey. This doesn't surprise me, but I think we'll hear other stories come out. So I do think that this still goes on. I think it's obviously not talked about for obvious reasons. But yeah, we'll see if the Harvard thing is the tip of the iceberg. Because it does feel like there are definitely things that go on in sports that, once again, people may not be all that comfortable about once they come out publicly. And hazing is one of those things. Junior hockey in Canada, the hazing reports and things that have come out, just absolutely horrible. So we'll see what Harvard does. They're going to have to do something, I would think. This investigation shouldn't take that long, considering the amount of information that was in that article from Katie Strang. who does excellent work. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.